Hey, shalom, 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 lakam, which is peace unto you all. Hi, Rob, Tawab, La Atam, Za'ach, Yakam, Yawam, Manor, Chagadal, Charlotte, which is good evening. This is your brother Yawan from the GMS camp in Charlotte. Nachamatam, Kayah, Malakat, Hashemayim, Kwa repent ye for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Call Layam La La, but now Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Chagodash, Wamashana, Lazakwanim, now Wamalakim, Shawr Chagadal, which is our praises to our Father Yahweh, which means he exists. Bahasham in the name Yahweh Shai delivers and double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. So I just put in a Google, a quick Google search, just going into World WW3. All right, it says World War III comes to the Americas, and I'm gonna read a little bit of each article. This is a beautiful edification through the Spirit. So it says WW3 comes to the Americas. It says 63 years later, a new Cuban Missile Crisis is in the making. Team Trump is building up a vast array of military forces in the Caribbean. Significantly, more than 10% of the U.S. naval fleet is either already or on station, or as with the USS Gerald Ford Strike Group and the USS Gravely guided missile destroyer headed toward the region. And pretty much, Trump is, making different militaristic moves, down in the like South America, if not mistaken, the Central Americas as well. And then also things on the U.S. home front, so these things are just being used as a means to make things more stringent, but that's essentially giving them certain experiences that's going to be needed for this third world war, because essentially Trump said that, on the U.S. home front, they was going to be used as pretty much the citizens was going to be used as testing grounds pretty much, because that third world's woe is, inching up here shortly. So I'm going to get that as well. This is Revelation. Give me a second. This is Revelation chapter 9. We'll get verse 12. And it says, one woe is past, and behold, there come two more. One woe is past, and behold, there come two woes more hereafter. So that first world's woe, all right, which woe goes into misery, destruction. All right, it went into WW1, World War I. All right, which was a lot of casualties. All right, World War II was a lot of casualties. This third world's woe is going to be way more casualties. All right, in which all the essentially all the nations is mounting up, with their forces and their bands. This is Yahweh Allah, Joel, chapter 3 and verse 9, and it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears, let the weak say, I am strong. All right, and so it says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, and that's why we see, the Gentile nations essentially amping up for war, whether it be Russia, all right, whether it be over in the what's known as Asia, all right, and so on and so forth. Essentially the spirit of war has been awakened, all right, in these other different countries and nations, while those in America, Babylon the Great, have been dulled or been put to sleep pretty much. Essentially, it appears as if, this place was jumped late on the bandwagon, because the scriptures say that they shall be as women, and essentially just going into that, the recruiting and retention has been very, very low. It's been articles that came out in the recent, months, years that has said, that recruiting is back up, but they're going to have to enact a draft, in which all these nations are doing that, you see, but it's just the U.S. essentially is a little behind the ball, it's becoming weak. It says, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. And that's essentially, why, again, we see the other nations mounting up for war. It says, wake up the mighty men. All right, they doing different shows of force, different little tactics and preparation. All right, to where, essentially we can see that WW3 is on the horizon. It says, beat your plowshares into swords. All right, reading it again. Yahweh Allah, Joel chapter 3 and verse 10, it says, beat your plowshares into swords. So these, docile, farming type of nations, they're essentially turning. They're doing a transition in their focal point. All right, so essentially they're switching over from being more of a from a more of a agricultural type of standpoint to a war type of standpoint, i.e., countries like Iran, all right, small nations like North Korea, or those smaller nations essentially. North Korea most recently has made advancements militaristically, by banding up with Russia and China and stuff like that, But these smaller nations essentially, that the ones that wasn't really known as world superpowers, essentially they're able to stand upon their feet, so to speak, because now they got the button, they got nukes. All right. That's why it says beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears, pretty much mounting up with militaristic type of equipment, because it's going to be a third war as well. It says, let the weak say, I am strong. They're able to say that they're strong because they got the button, they have the ICBM nukes. All the technology, all the militaristic technology and advancements, these other nations are essentially obtaining those things. All right. So continuing on. It says significantly more than 10% of the U.S. naval fleet is already, well, I'm gonna skip down, or it says, in terms of scale, that is akin to Washington's stationing of U.S. forces to defend Israel against Iran ballistic missile and drone attacks earlier this year. In which this sparks in my spirit. It's a war on the U.S. home front. All right, it's war in Central America. All right, what's known as Central America and South America. All right, but then in the Caribbean, all right, overseas, essentially this place is going out just like Rome. I'm gonna get a quick precept real fast. This is Ecclesiastes Quahala chapter 1, and we'll give verse 9, and it says, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun, because ultimately, kingdoms are regenerated, people are regenerated, but going back to the kingdoms, this place is Rome 2.0, it's Egypt 2.0, it's Greece 2.0, because essentially, in the same thought process, Hellenization is just nothing more than Westernization. It's the same philosophies and ways of life in these different societies. All right, but reading it back, it says, the thing that hath been is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Because ultimately Rome went down by spreading themselves too thin. All right, and that's essentially what has went on in America, Babylon the Great. They're spreading themselves too thin. All right, it's divided on the U.S. home front. It's divided amongst, the world. It's divided, pretty much everywhere. The mindset and essentially, we understand what the scriptures say. A kingdom divided against itself can't stand. So this place is going down fast. All right, and as it continues to spiral downward, or CTD, circle the drain, this place is going to be preparing for WW3, because after WW3, this place will be destroyed. All right, so I'm gonna read a couple more of these articles.